everybody and welcome to this V-Ray for SketchUp tutorial. Today we're going to look over how you can add extra detail to your scene using the V-Ray atmospheric effects, aerial perspective and environment fog. Both are very different and are better used for different situations. Have in mind that we always recommend for you to add the aerial perspective or environment fog in the late stages of your scene, maybe just before final rendering, because they take some time to render and are great for a final touch. Let's start with the aerial perspective. Here we have a beautiful sunny day shot. We'll be using the interactive render throughout this tutorial to see the results almost instantly and have a better understanding of what's going on inside the scene. We'll start by adding the aerial perspective. The aerial perspective can be used only if you have a sun inside the scene. In SketchUp by default you will have the sun, so you should have no issues with that. If you want to add an aerial perspective to create the thickness of the air when you look far away, or just use it as an artistic approach, you need to go to the settings and on the arrow on the right you will find volumetric environment. Let's enable this one and add the aerial perspective. We see it almost instantly as the thickening of the air in the horizon. There are just a few settings when it comes to the aerial perspective and very easily you can create beautiful, interesting results with it. First of all, we have the visibility range. This is in meters and it means how far away from the camera will the aerial perspective start. So, lower values will bring the aerial perspective forward, meaning it will be thicker and much more visible. Then we have the atmospheric height, which determines how far from the zero in the ground the aerial perspective should start. You can use it to create the effect of dust near the ground, so for that you need to add lower values. Having your scene in real world size makes working with such effects much easier, as you can see here. Our house is a little above the ground, so we need to add a value around 24 meters from the ground. Since in this case I prefer a much overall effect, I'll make it higher so I'm sure that everything in the scene is inside the aerial perspective. Then we have the filter color, and as you see by default the aerial perspective is bringing this white kind of color. We can change it from here. As you see, this is a very delicate color because it affects a lot, so I suggest using very soft color variation if you need to. Have in mind that the aerial perspective is visible in the render elements, so if you want a clear alpha, you may consider removing the effect environment thick. In this case, I just want to have a beautiful render right outside of SketchUp, so I'll leave the aerial perspective to affect the environment. And I want to make it a bit deeper, which means I'll push it closer to the camera with a lower visibility range value. I'm happy with this, so I'll leave it to render. The aerial perspective adds a very beautiful effect to our scene, but it can take some time to calculate and gives us the result we want. That's why, as I mentioned in the beginning, it's recommended to add it as a late part of your workflow. I'll give the interactive render a few minutes to render this one so we see the results better, and then we can go into the environment fog and what it is most suitable for. Now that we have our aerial perspective, let's go and explore the environment fog. The environment fog, much like the aerial perspective, provides an overall atmospheric effect, but it's a bit harder to calculate. In order to showcase it better, I'll use another scene, which will be a night shot. The main benefit of the environment fog is that, unlike the aerial perspective, which is sort of a post effect, the environment fog actually is affected by the illumination in the scene, meaning that you can create volumetric lights. I'll enable the environment fog here and let's render how it looks. Although the environment fog has more possibilities, it's slower to calculate, so have that in mind when picking which one to use. We are using a night shot for this one because it better showcases the atmospheric effect of the environment fog and its volumetric lights. The main controllers of the environment fog are the height, which, like the aerial perspective, is the overall height inside the scene. And then you have the distance, which, unlike the aerial perspective, here defines the distance between the individual, let's call them particles, of the fog. So larger values will produce a more transparent fog, you may say. And smaller values will produce more dense fog. You can of course change the color, which, like the aerial perspective, is a very delicate parameter, so be careful with that one. There are quite a few advanced parameters inside the environment fog, but my recommendation is first get comfortable with the ones here, and then if you need, you can go and read more about the additional ones. Just one of them that I want to turn your attention to is that the environment fog has the possibility to be affected not by all lights, but just in a few particular lights, allowing you so much more control in illumination. And also you may notice the volumetric lights starting to appear. The best way to achieve that is having directionability inside the light, so you can point the cone, let's call it, at a particular direction. As many things in V-Ray, the best way to achieve great results using the environment fog is to experiment and see what works best for your scene. Again, as you may see from here, this is a heavy effect, so I strongly recommend keeping it up to the latest stages of rendering. When you're happy with what you see in interactive, you can always stop it and do the full resolution render here as well. So let's go. I'll leave this one to render, and I hope you enjoy next time you decide to add some atmospheric effects to your scene with the V-Ray aerial perspective or the V-Ray environment fog. Thank you for being with us.